Hello, friends. I'm Wendy Jo, and this is the Grow Podcast. How are you today, Ashley?
I am just fine. How are you?
I am just fine, also. I think that's a perfect word. Not like fine.
Right?
Fine is one of those words that can be like dismissive. It can be, but it really, I think in this case, it just sort of means balanced. I don't know. I'm fine.
Yeah. I try to be very intentional with like when people ask me how I'm doing to really think, like take some time to think about it.
Uh-huh.
So I'm not just
So
kind
it's
of,
not just good.
yeah, like it's not, if I'm good, like, I'm most likely actually good, because a lot of people say it as just a response to the
Yes.
question and not really in consideration to what the actual, answer is.
Right, right. I think we're taught to do that. Like you don't have to don't share everything with everyone. Just tell
Yeah.
them you're okay and keep going.
Right. And it defeats the purpose of the greeting. You
Right.
somebody, you're asking them, trying to assess how are you doing, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's the purpose of the question. And
Right.
so as the responder, it is our responsibility to respond with an accurate answer.
Yes, I agree. I agree. So today we are going to talk about what is a healer? What does it mean to be a healer? And I think this is a great topic since we're both health professionals. And the first question I want to ask you about it is when you were going to school, you decided you wanted to be a nurse.
Mhm.
And then you went to school. So when you were going to school, did you feel like you were being trained to be a healer?
No, I was being trained to do a job.
Mm. That is a great response and very specific to I would agree. I don't so as an occupational therapist, um, we were taught to tap into our creative brain. It's definitely an art and a science, and all of that. But I don't remember ever talking about being an actual healer or feeling like I was trained to heal people. It's a job, right?
Yeah.
So you have to learn how to do that job,
Yes.
and uh, the training is extensive. And when you finish, at least when I can only speak for myself. When I finished, I did not feel like I knew how to do that job.
Either. I didn't either.
Right. And and I did not feel like a healer for sure. I felt like a person who was trying to synthesize all the information that they taught me and do a job.
Yeah, I agree with that. That was the same experience for me. And I had a lot of conversation about the art and the science of what the nursing profession is.
Mm-hmm.
And my takeaway, one time it actually came up when I was in a transition of practice program. So I was like the facilitator for new nurses.
Mm-hmm.
And I posed the question, but I remember walking away with the idea that the art was actually in the art of facilitating the completion of tasks, if that makes sense. Like,
Hmm.
well, could you juggle all the balls, in the air?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of what I walked away. It was an art to being able to masterfully conduct all of the things that a nurse has to do in a day. And the science part of it was the science of the activity that we performed. Like
Right.
that's how I quantified the art and science
I
conversation.
see. Okay. So I would say for OT, we were definitely learning it to be an art and a science.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know how much people even know about the schooling for either of the things that we do.
Yeah.
But as an OT, we take 4 semesters of activities. And through those activities, what we have to do is so let's say they teach us how to make pottery, right? We learn how to make pottery. Now we have to analyze everything that goes into making pottery, cognitively, neurologically, fit, what muscles are involved. Like we had to write these intense papers for each, whatever the activity was. right? So I felt that was a blending of art and science. But then when I went into the field, did they have all of the tools to do any of those activities?
Right.
No. They had weights and all the things you see in a therapy gym,
Mhm.
right? So, which we learned that too. And we also learned how to analyze, how to analyze all that. But, you know, the practical part of it is that we're not going to actually sit with a patient and determine all the things that they enjoy doing, which is part of what we're supposed to do, and use those things to help them get better. That's what we were taught, but that's not what it's like in the field.
So let me ask you this: like, what is your idea or definition of what a healing or being a healer means?
That's a good question. First of all, I think we all have some degree of healing capabilities and healer within us. I think it's a natural part of being human. And I think our connection to God or spirit or whatever you call it enhances that. So as you grow that connection, uh, if you choose to do that, then your healing capability increases. Um, so I think that a healer is someone who wants to see health and wellness in themselves and in other people, and will step outside the box or inside the box, whatever it will take to achieve that goal. Mostly, you can just use that for yourself. Really tune in and see what's going on, and what you can do to heal it, and then ask for help when you need it.
Yeah. And so yes, I think that's a good point. Being able to ask for support when you need support, like know when your limitations
Mhm.
are, is a big part of it. So like awareness and all that, like paying attention to how deeply scarred you are in
Mhm.
whatever area you are in. So similar to physical healing, a cut with a band-aid may work, but if you have a gaping wound, you might need surgery,
Right.
right? And you
Right.
need to employ somebody to help, facilitate that. Um, and so, depending on how deep the trauma may be or the emotional wound may be, might mean that you need to employ other support in order to facilitate that for yourself. But in a highly functioning human body, let's say you have somebody who passes away. What do you go through? You go through the grieving process. That is an emotional healing process,
Mhm.
you know? And so, but a lot of us don't even know how to get through that process. We go from
Right.
the first phase to the second phase, back to the first phase. We might jump to the third phase. Like we never allow the tears to cleanse us the way that they have been intended to cleanse. We never allow our emotions to flow through us the way that they're intended to flow through us. Instead, we block it. Not to mention, you only get 3 days of bereavement if you work in a hospital anyway. So there's not
Right.
enough time
Right.
to go through the process.
Right. And you have to, they're supposed to specifically be related to you in a certain way
Yeah.
to even get,
Right.
never mind the fact that friends you're often closer to
Mm-hmm.
than family members, or, it's just another piece that's really not working,
Yeah.
and why health professionals are leaving the field, in droves, really, because we're not even treated in like healers. So do we feel like healers? Those that are doing simply it's not simple, but traditional nursing therapy, you know, not only is there potential that they don't really feel like a healer, they're not really treated like one either.
Yeah. Seriously, we're not treated as the people who are intended to help people heal. And I think it all starts with allowing healthcare providers to heal. We suffered a significant collective trauma, anybody who works in a hospital, through the
Yes.
pandemic.
Mhm.
And at what point are we supposed to heal through that? And then we wonder why 2/3 of, I know this statistic about nurses specifically, 2/3 of the population of nurses are suffering from burnout.
Wow.
That's
Two
bananas.
thirds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
64%, I think the actual number was.
Wow. Right. And, Yeah, I mean, all of that. When you mention the collective trauma, I think about that a lot because I know I did not work through the pandemic.
Mhm.
I started working back as an OT a year ago. And when I arrived on the scene, I had all this energy because I hadn't been in it.
Yeah.
But everyone around me was really tired and
Yeah.
had been through so much trauma from, working very long hours, wearing PPE on and off 10 times a day. You know, it's exhausting. I
Yeah.
only experienced a fraction of what they experienced, and I was exhausted.
Yeah.
So, um, you know, in not in any way are we really treated like healers. Healers are really sensitive often and, need the nurturing too because they're giving, giving, giving. And, we just don't see that in the professions, unfortunately.
Yeah. And, when you said the sentence, we're not treated as healers, I would like to say that we're not even treated as humans.
Right. Right. Because before the pandemic, if you got sick, too much,
Yeah.
right? You get in trouble. You're supposed to come to work always. It's a little better with that now,
Mhm.
but I'm sure it'll go back to the way that it was. Um, and no, I don't think that we're treated as humans very frequently.
Yeah.
And on that note, we'll be right back.
Are you a healer? You will be surprised how many people told me no. I found that a lot of people believe that healing only comes outside of you. But I beg to differ. Have you ever gone through the grieving process? That process is a healing process. It's just well known. We go through similar processes when we experience different types of trauma, pain, or hurt. Many of us run away from those processes, though. But for those of us who don't, I consider you a healer. If you are a nurse or healthcare professional, I believe that we are healers. I also believe even if you are not, you are also a healer. It is just a matter of identifying how you heal. So I ask again, are you a healer?
And we're back. So we were talking about how health professionals aren't often treated as human. Maybe that sounds extreme to some people who haven't worked in healthcare, but let's think about a physician, right? So I was married to someone through medical school and residency, and to say they were not treated as human is an understatement. um, the hours, working, sometimes 24 hours in a row, only having time to sleep for 5 or 6 hours and having to be back, not being able to change clothes, having to share a shower with, all these other interns and residents, or beds, like a break room where they can rest. There's not enough, for everybody. So they're rotating and all laying on the same. It's like these are people training to deal with life and death situations. Um, so that may be extreme, but it's the way that it's been.
Yeah. I remember talking to a young budding physician. I think she was a resident at the time, and she was pregnant. And I remember asking her, like, if she was going to get the traditional 6 weeks off after birth. And she told me she was only going to take 2 weeks after the baby because she didn't want to miss a specific rotation. Otherwise, that if she missed that rotation, then she would have been pushed behind a whole year in her residency.
See, and that's not fair. I mean, so they're not right out of high school, right? They're adults who
Yeah.
many are already married or
Mhm.
not, having children, all of that. And, you know, when I remember when they started, we went to this couples class that they had at the medical school, and they actually said more than half of you will not be married
Oh, yeah.
when when you finish.
Because
And
it's
there
so
were,
yeah, heck yeah.
yeah, and there, it was true, you know. um, so so yeah, so that's, you know, one, just one professional, right? But you know, there's so many things that examples of, you know, just not being allowed to have humanness, because not because they need your healing abilities for longer hours, because they have a schedule to fill, they have things that have to be done. It's, again, it's for the job duties, not necessarily for your skills, but you have a license that they need.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you just fill it in the number, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if I need 5 OTs and 6 nurses, we're gonna find those human bodies and place them right in position.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I feel like it's just a disservice though to not only to the clients who we serve, because if we don't feel like humans, there's no way we can pass on humanistic, you know, connection,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like if we're treated like animals or widgets or whatever you want to call us, um, most likely we're going to treat our patients the same way. And so, you know, I think both are victims in the situation. But I do think it is a duty and responsibility for people who choose these type of roles to be aware and to at least start to take steps to achieving wellness, achieving healing for themselves, you know, going to therapy, meditating, going to sleep, finding ways to sleep, right? Like healthcare professionals suck in sleep.
Yeah, right. Right. Well, I mean, so many times I like wake up suddenly because I think, did I write that note, or did
Yeah.
I did I
Yeah.
did I lock the door to the rehab gym? I was the last one. You know, I mean, it's like a lot of stuff that
Mhm.
is important and has to be remembered. So it can affect your own health in so many ways. And you know, you're absolutely right. All of the self care is so important, and included in that is this role, is this job really the one for me, um, where I can really fulfill all of my healing abilities and potential to help people? Because most of us go into health fields to help people.
Yeah.
You know, why did you become a nurse?
Well, I actually love children and I wanted to take care of kids my entire life. And then I realized I could not take care of kids. That was not it.
Uh-huh.
But and I still do love kids. Like everything about like dealing with little people is so exciting to me. Even with dealing with my children while they drive me nuts, I would not have life any other way.
Right.
Um, but there's when I was going to be a pediatrician. And then I was like, oh, okay, like I'll become a nurse first and then I'll become a pediatrician because I thought that's how you matriculated through.
Oh, nice. Uh-huh.
And I was like, okay. And then I get there and I'm like, nope, it doesn't really work that way.
Right.
And so I went through my pediatric rotation in nursing school. They asked me to put in an NG tube on a 9-month-old baby. And by the time I was done, everybody around me was like clapping. They're like, great job, Ashley, because I was the first one to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sitting there like in sweat and tears, and the baby was like crying and sweating with tears and everything. And me and him were both exhausted.
Sure. And then you're expected to just keep going.
Right?
Yes.
I was like, that's not going to work for me.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. You know, it's funny. So I did in high school, my senior year of high school, I did a kind of a work study thing outside of school where I worked in a classroom with disabled children. And I really thought I wanted to work with children because I loved that internship or whatever you want to call it, work study. I don't know what they called it. I really enjoyed when the physical therapist came in, occupational therapist. You know, I enjoyed problem solving, you know, positioning in the wheelchair, and I thought this is great. But then when I went through the pediatric courses in school, um, it didn't really speak to me. And ultimately, I didn't even do a pediatric internship. I just did physical disabilities and mental health, because we picked two of the three, and so what you think you want to do and what you end up doing can be completely different, once you're there. Um, but even with adults, I mean, I have that experience. Sometimes working with someone, is exhausting depending on what we're doing. And again, it's that humanness factor. We're supposed to just keep going. With therapy, it's productivity, productivity, productivity. I wish it was quality of care, quality of care, quality of care. um, because my healer instinct just wants to give people, whatever they need. And, I recognize we have constraints, with the reimbursement system, which is terrible, and rules about things. But ultimately, I still want to figure out ways that I'm going to get them what they really need. And that's not necessarily what the people who own healthcare companies care about. They care about it to the extent that, um, when families leave, they'll give a good review and report, right? They care about it then. And maybe they care about it, but they don't know how to include that and still make sure that, everybody involved is making plenty of money, except for the health professional who's delivering services.
And here's the thing too: the people who run healthcare like companies generally are not people like us, right? Like they're
Right.
usually economists, they're usually business majors, they're usually very, very numbers driven type of professionals that usually have nothing to do with care of the patient. And they actually rely on people like you and I to be able to tell them like how things are supposed to, how things can impact patients. But the priority always remains the numbers.
And we'll be right back.
Have you heard of the Cannabis Nursing School? It's a place where cannabis nursing, entrepreneurship, and spirituality meet. The Highline Tribe is waiting for you, and it's so easy to find. CannabisNursingSchool.com.
And we're back. We're talking about what is a healer and healing work and health professionals and being healers. So, if you're a health professional, do you think it's essential to understand what we're talking about, to really take a look at, what is healing? Am I a healer? And also, how do you get health professionals to do self healing, for their job?
I think so. I kind of do a lot of this work with nurses who come to me who want to learn more about cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized with the nurses that I've come in contact with, and even through my own experience, is that you just know something's off, right? Like you're going through, a lot of times we're going through like this big life transition. We don't know what's on the other side of it, but whatever's on the other side of it, you don't want it to be what had been happening before.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the last episode, I talked about the resistance, like everything seems like an uphill climb, so to speak. And so I think the first step is recognizing that you're not happy where you are in life, right? Like not necessarily in a job or not necessarily in a relationship, but I want something more than what I'm experiencing today. Mm-hmm. And I think that's usually the first step to being able to start to take steps toward discovering what it looks like.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you.
It's okay.
And starting to ask those questions, like if you're feeling like it's what you're doing for work in your field is not quite right, but you don't exactly know why, start asking those questions and remembering why you went into the field to begin with. And, I think asking is what I'm doing healing work? I'm a medical professional where our job is to really to heal people. you know, um, you know, am I behaving as a healer? Is if I'm unhappy at work, is it because I'm not really fulfilling what I wanted from going into nursing or therapy or being a doctor, whatever it is?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that applies outside of like even these particular roles too. But I think the other thing is taking the time to go through this process for yourself, to just like that process of self-discovery, I think is the key aspect of it. Because before you can even recognize that you're not healing others, you have to recognize how you're not healing yourself, how you're neglecting yourself.
Right. That's so important. And so you had suggested a few things earlier, like meditation but I also think, just general nutrition, you mentioned sleep, like all the holistic care that we think about for a patient, we should be thinking about that for ourselves.
Yeah. And you'll be surprised how many of us do not. Like, it's like we don't eat well. I talked about sleep already. We don't exercise. I mean, we suffer, we have like so many chronic ailments is bananas, high incidence of alcohol addiction, high incidence of psychological or mental health issues. Like it's really sad when you think about it. All these people who are supposed to be taking care of other people, but we're suffering. We have diabetes, just like your patient has diabetes. We're not checking our blood sugar, just like your patient's not checking their blood sugar. We just sitting there not checking our blood sugar together.
Right. Right. And yet, we're, doing patient teaching about all of these things. And I think that because that human factor is taken out, we're not really treated like human ourselves. We just keep following that same pattern and we don't take care of ourselves and we just keep working till frequently we're sick ourselves and need health professionals. It's a vicious cycle, really.
Yeah, seriously. So yeah, I think first, if anybody needs to take a step, they're like, I'm not a healer, I want to heal in my job as a car salesman, right? The first step is to say, what have I done for myself lately?
I love that. What have I done for myself lately?
What about you? What do you think?
I think that that's a great first step. And then when you answer that question, uh, really be honest with yourself, because this is your life. This is the life we're in right now. And if you're just pushing yourself to work and you're not doing your own self-care, you're just basically shooting yourself in the foot when your life could be much fuller and happier and healthier. And I'm not saying you as a health provider you should be perfect, with everything. We're human, we're supposed to be human, so I'm not going in the other direction, still making you not human. Right. But really take a look, be honest, and then start to figure out what the plan is.
Yeah, seriously. And take action today. Like, even if it takes take a 5-minute meditation, 2 minute, 1 minute, 30 seconds, something, right?
Yes.
Anything you can do today that will help kind of clear you and take an action towards, cleansing yourself, clearing your mind, finding healing within yourself.
Right. Yes, I think that's great advice. And I hope everyone has a great week. Bye.
Bye.